My name is Margaret. I am 65 years old, and I live in a quiet town in North Carolina. I've always been the kind of woman who believed in kindness, in helping people even when they didn't deserve it, and in holding my family close no matter what storms we faced. But the night it all happened, the night that would change everything I thought I knew about family, I found myself standing in my own living room, my heart pounding like a war drum, staring at something I never imagined I would see in all my years. It was past midnight. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. My hands trembled as I picked up the small black object that had fallen to the floor near my grandson's backpack. A flash drive. I didn't think much of it at first, maybe some school project, maybe a video game. But when I plugged it into my computer and opened the only folder on it, my entire world shifted upside down. The screen lit up with a video. My son, Daniel, and his wife, Rachel, were sitting at my dining table, whispering to each other. I leaned closer, my eyes wide as their voices came through the speakers. Rachel's voice was sharp, almost cold. "She's too stubborn to sign the papers, Daniel. If she doesn't hand over the property, we're stuck waiting until she dies. Do you want to wait years for that house and the rest of her money?" Daniel rubbed his face, his voice low. "I don't want to do this, Rachel." "Then I'll do it," Rachel snapped. "No one will ever know. I already have the pills." I gasped so loudly I had to cover my mouth. The woman my son had married, the mother of my grandchildren, was plotting to poison me. And my son, my only child, was just sitting there, not stopping her, not protecting me. The video ended abruptly, leaving me staring at my reflection in the dark screen. My knees felt weak. My chest tightened. My breath came fast and shallow. For a long moment, I thought I might faint right there at the desk. My son and his wife plotting to take my life, all because of the house I'd worked for with my late husband. And that was when the sound came. A creak on the stairs. My blood ran cold. Someone else was in the house. Hello everyone. Welcome to today's video. Let me know where you are watching from. You don't know, you might be lucky to get a shout out on our next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you like stories like this. I wasn't always this woman, shaking, afraid, listening for footsteps in my own home. I had lived a long life full of love and heartbreak. I met my husband, Charles, when I was just 22. We built everything together from scratch. The little pharmacy downtown that later grew into a small chain, the house we moved into after years of saving, the dreams we tucked into the hearts of our children. When Charles passed away 5 years ago, I thought the worst pain of my life had already come and gone. I was wrong. Back then, Daniel was different. He was my miracle baby, the one I prayed for every night after years of infertility. I spoiled him maybe too much. I gave him what I never had growing up in a broken home. I wanted him to feel secure, to know his parents loved him without question. When he brought Rachel home for the first time, I tried to welcome her with open arms. She was polite, sweet-smiling, quick to compliment me. But something about her eyes unsettled me, though I couldn't put my finger on it. Over the years, little things happened. She would make sharp comments when she thought I couldn't hear, or complain about the old-fashioned way I ran the house. Sometimes she'd sigh whenever I offered to help with the children. Still, I told myself it was nothing. I wanted peace. I wanted family dinners, not family wars. But now, years later, I realized how blind I had been. The night I found that flash drive, I sat frozen in my chair, replaying the video in my mind over and over. Betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from the people you trust most. I wanted to believe there was some mistake, that maybe they were acting out a play or rehearsing some script. But the look in Rachel's eyes, the fear in my son's voice, it was real. It was all too real. And then the sound on the stairs grew louder. A footstep, another creak. My body stiffened. Someone was coming down. Slowly, carefully, I yanked the flash drive out of the computer, clutching it tight in my fist. My heart thudded, so hard I thought it would burst. What if it was Rachel? What if she knew I had found out? What if tonight was the night she planned to follow through? The living room lamp flickered, as if the house itself sensed the danger creeping into my world. I stood, every bone in my body shaking, and turned toward the staircase. That's when I saw the shadow. A tall, slow-moving figure stretched across the wall, inching closer, closer, until it reached the bottom step. And then, the shadow on the wall stretched longer as the figure reached the bottom of the staircase. My breath caught in my throat. I gripped the flash drive so tightly it left marks in my palm. My whole body screamed for me to run, but I stood frozen in place, staring at the dark outline moving closer. "Grandma," a small voice whispered. I blinked. My knees buckled with relief and confusion. It wasn't Rachel. It wasn't Daniel. It was Jacob, my 12-year-old grandson, standing at the bottom of the stairs in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. "Jacob," I breathed, my voice breaking. "What are you doing awake, sweetheart?" He yawned, shifting from foot to foot. "I heard noises. Thought maybe you were watching TV. Can't sleep." His gaze dropped to my hand, where I quickly hid the flash drive. I forced a smile, though my heart was still hammering. "It's late, honey. You should be in bed." He squinted at me, then patted over, his small hand touching mine. "Are you okay, Grandma? You look scared." Oh, if only he knew. My sweet boy, innocent and unaware of the storm brewing just above his head. My throat tightened as I smoothed his hair. "I'm fine, darling. Just had a bad dream, I suppose." I walked him back upstairs, tucking him in, humming the same lullaby I used to sing to Daniel when he was little. The memory of those nights nearly broke me. How had my son grown into a man who could sit quietly while his wife plotted my death? When Jacob finally drifted off, I returned to my room and locked the door. I sat on the bed, the flash drive still in my hand. My mind was racing. Should I call the police? But what if they didn't believe me? What if Rachel found out before I could act? She'd deny everything, claim the video was fake, and Daniel, would he stand up for me or for her? I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think of anything except betrayal. Betrayal by the very people I had sacrificed everything for. The next morning, I plastered on my best fake smile and joined the family at breakfast. Rachel was there, her hair perfectly curled, her perfume sharp in the air. She greeted me sweetly like always. "Good morning, Margaret. Did you sleep well?" The memory of her words from the video echoed in my head. I already have the pills. I forced myself to nod, my spoon trembling as I stirred my oatmeal. Jacob and his little sister Emily chatted happily about school, while Daniel sat quietly, staring at his coffee like it held answers to questions he couldn't face. All I could think about was that flash drive burning a hole in my pocket. For the next few days, I played my part. I smiled. I helped Rachel with the kids. I laughed when I had to. But every moment felt like walking across thin ice, knowing it could crack beneath me at any second. At night, when everyone was asleep, I would watch the video again, torturing myself, maybe, but also reminding myself it was real. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't paranoid. The betrayal was right there in front of me, pixel by pixel, word by word. Still, I hesitated to act. Why? Because part of me, the part that had rocked Daniel to sleep, bandaged his scraped knees, and prayed for him every night, didn't want to believe he could be part of this. Maybe Rachel was pushing him. Maybe he was too weak to stop her, but not evil enough to want me gone. That tiny thread of hope was the only thing holding me together. But life has a way of tearing hope apart. One afternoon, I went into the kitchen to make tea. Rachel was there, leaning against the counter, scrolling on her phone. She looked up and smiled. But it wasn't her smile that made my blood run cold. It was the little amber bottle on the counter beside her. She quickly slid it into the pocket of her cardigan when she noticed my eyes on it. "What's that?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Oh, nothing," she said lightly. "Just vitamins. You know, I've been so tired lately." She breezed past me, humming under her breath, leaving the faint smell of lavender and something else, something bitter, hanging in the air. My hands shook as I poured the tea. It wasn't vitamins. I knew it. She had them. The pills. That night, I sat in my room with the flash drive clutched to my chest. I thought of calling the police again. I even picked up the phone, dialed 9-1, and then hung up before finishing. What would I say? That my daughter-in-law smiled too sweetly? That she had a bottle of something I couldn't name? They'd think I was just a paranoid old woman. No, I needed proof stronger than a video. Proof that couldn't be denied. And that's when the idea came to me. The next morning, I drove into town. I told Rachel I was going to the pharmacy for my prescriptions, but I made a different stop first. A small security shop on Main Street. The kind of place Charles and I used to joke about needing when we were younger. An hour later, I drove home with a bag in the trunk. Inside were tiny cameras, ones that could be hidden in plain sight. I would place them in the kitchen, the living room, maybe even the dining room. If Rachel was truly planning something, I'd catch her in the act. But as I pulled into the driveway, my stomach dropped. Rachel was standing at the window, her arms crossed, staring straight at me. Rachel's silhouette lingered at the window like a shadow that refused to move. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel as the bag in the trunk seemed to grow heavier by the second. Did she see me? Did she see the logo on the bag from the security store? My chest constricted. I forced myself to breathe slowly, count to 5, and plaster on the calmest face I could manage. With deliberate slowness, I got out of the car and walked toward the house, each step echoing in my ears. Rachel was still there, watching, waiting. When I finally opened the door, she was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, her smile just a little too wide. "Out shopping?" she asked, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "Yes," I replied, steadying my voice. "Pharmacy run," and I picked up a few extras while I was out. Her eyes flickered to the trunk behind me. For a second, I thought she might walk right past me to look. Instead, she stepped closer, brushing imaginary dust off my shoulder. "You shouldn't tire yourself out, Margaret. You're not as young as you used to be." The words were sweet, but her tone made them sting. I gave her a tight smile. "I can manage just fine, thank you." She leaned in, her perfume wrapping around me like smoke. "I'll make us tea," she whispered, almost like a promise. Then she turned and disappeared into the kitchen. My heart thundered. Tea. The same tea she'd sweetened for me last week. I hadn't touched it then, and I wouldn't now. As soon as she was gone, I hurried back to the car, grabbed the bag, and carried it upstairs to my room like it was treasure I had to hide. I locked the door behind me, collapsed onto the bed, and let out the breath I'd been holding. I unpacked the tiny cameras carefully. My hands shook as I read the instructions. Charles would have laughed at me fumbling with the technology, but he would have been proud too. If he were alive, none of this would be happening. Rachel wouldn't dare try something like this with him around. That thought burned. The loneliness, the aching hole in my heart since Charles passed, had left me vulnerable. Maybe that's why Rachel thought I was weak. But she was wrong. I started with the living room. While Rachel took the kids outside to play, I quickly tucked one camera inside the clock on the mantel. Another went in the kitchen, hidden among the cookbooks on the shelf. I placed one in the dining room chandelier where no one would ever think to look. Every movement made my palms sweat, but I pressed on. I needed proof stronger than words. By the end of the day, the cameras were live, silently watching. My chest loosened with relief. For the first time in days, I felt like I had the upper hand. But Rachel wasn't a fool. That evening, while I folded laundry in my room, I heard her talking to Daniel downstairs. Her voice was low, but the walls of that old house carried sound like secrets eager to be heard. "She's hiding something," Rachel whispered. "I saw the bag. She thinks she's clever, but I won't let her ruin this for us." I froze, a pair of socks clenched in my fist. Daniel muttered something I couldn't catch, but Rachel's laugh sent chills down my spine. Cold, humorless, like a knife against glass. I sat on the bed, my chest heaving. She knew. She didn't know what I had, not yet, but she knew enough to be dangerous. The next day passed in uneasy quiet. I watched Rachel from the corner of my eye. She was too cheerful, too helpful. She even baked cookies with Emily, filling the house with the smell of sugar and cinnamon. Anyone else would have thought she was the perfect daughter-in-law. But I knew the truth. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat at my laptop, checking the camera feeds. Hours of nothing. Rachel washing dishes, Daniel scrolling on his phone, the kids playing. Then, just as I was about to shut it down, I saw her. Rachel stood in the kitchen, holding that amber bottle again. She poured something into a mug, stirred it, then looked straight at the camera. Not directly, not enough to prove she saw it, but close enough that my blood turned to ice. I snapped the laptop shut, my heart racing. Did she know? Was she testing me? The next morning, Rachel set a steaming mug in front of me at breakfast. Thought you might like some tea, she said sweetly. My stomach twisted. I looked at Daniel, but he avoided my eyes. The children chattered, oblivious. I forced a smile, pushed the mug aside. I'll drink it later. Her lips curved, but her eyes stayed flat. Of course. That day I knew the games were over. Rachel wasn't just suspicious, she was aware. And she was daring me to act. I thought of the flash drive. I thought of the cameras. I thought of Jacob and Emily, innocent children caught in the middle of their parents' greed. And I thought of Charles, the man who had trusted me to protect this family even after he was gone. I wouldn't fail him. That evening, when Rachel stepped out to take a phone call, I slipped into her room. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure the children could hear it downstairs. I opened her nightstand drawer, and there it was, the amber bottle. I picked it up, turning it in my hand, reading the label. The name on it wasn't vitamins. It was a powerful sedative, one that could stop a heart if misused. My breath caught. Proof. Hard proof. But before I could slip it back, the bedroom door creaked open. I froze. Mom. Daniel's voice. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the bottle. He stood in the doorway, his eyes locking on me, then on the bottle in my hand. His face went pale. What are you doing? Daniel's eyes locked on me, then on the amber bottle in my hand. His face drained of color, and for a moment the room felt too small for the two of us. My heart hammered against my ribs like a prisoner begging to be let free. Mom, he said again, his voice tight, his jaw clenching. What are you doing in here? I swallowed hard, my hand trembling as I placed the bottle back in the drawer, careful not to make a sound. Daniel, I began, forcing my voice calm though it cracked under the weight of panic. I was looking for something. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a soft click that sounded louder than thunder. His eyes narrowed. In Rachel's nightstand, I searched his face, desperate for a sign that he might believe me, desperate for the son I once knew, the boy who used to curl into my lap when storms frightened him, the boy who once promised me he'd always protect me. But the man before me was guarded, torn, and I couldn't read him. Daniel, I said softly, I need you to listen to me. That bottle. His hand shot up, cutting me off. Stop. His voice was sharp, colder than I had ever heard it. You've been acting strange lately. Rachel told me you've been suspicious, paranoid. He dragged a hand through his hair, pacing. Now I find you in her room snooping? Do you have any idea what this looks like? The word stabbed deeper than he knew. Paranoid. That's what Rachel had planted in his head. She was turning him against me piece by piece, the same way poison seeps silently into a drink. I took a step toward him, my hands trembling. Daniel, please. You need to hear me. Rachel is not who you think she is. The doorknob rattled. Both of us froze. Then the door swung open, and Rachel stepped in. Her eyes landed instantly on the drawer, then on me, then on Daniel. For the briefest moment, her expression faltered. Surprise, maybe fear, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a cool smile. What's going on here? She asked sweetly, though her tone carried steel beneath the sugar. I opened my mouth, but Daniel beat me to it. I found Mom in your room, he said stiffly, with one of your bottles. Rachel's eyes widened in feigned shock. Margaret. She pressed a hand to her chest. Why would you go through my things? I wasn't, my voice cracked. I wasn't snooping. She moved past Daniel and closed the drawer with deliberate slowness, then turned back to me, her eyes glistening as if tears were seconds away. I don't know what I've done to make you distrust me, she whispered, her voice quivering with practiced fragility. But this hurts, Margaret. I've only ever wanted to be part of this family. The manipulation was so thick I could choke on it. Daniel's jaw tightened as he looked between us. His voice was low, heavy. Enough. Mom, you need to stop this. My breath hitched. Daniel, you don't understand. No, he snapped, his voice cracking. I can't do this anymore. You're making things worse. You're making me choose. The word stung like a slap. Making him choose. He didn't see the trap Rachel had built. He only saw me, his mother, as the problem. Rachel laid a gentle hand on his arm. Don't be angry with her, she murmured. She's older. Maybe she's just confused. Confused. The word slithered through the air, poisonous and deliberate. I straightened my back, my voice steadier now. I am not confused, and I am not paranoid. That bottle you're hiding, it isn't vitamins. It's dangerous, and I know exactly what you've been planning. Rachel's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she recovered quickly, letting out a soft laugh. Planning? Margaret, this is madness. Do you hear yourself? She turned to Daniel, her eyes wide and innocent. She thinks I'm trying to hurt her. Silence. Heavy, suffocating. Daniel stared at the floor, his face pale, his shoulders tight. Then he whispered, almost too softly to hear. Rachel, is it true? Her head whipped toward him, eyes flashing. How can you even ask me that? She hissed, her sweet facade cracking for just an instant. But then she softened again, tears spilling on cue. I've done everything for this family. Everything for you. And now your mother is accusing me of something so cruel. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing. I watched, my chest aching as my son held her. Not me, not his mother. Her, the woman who wanted me gone. I stumbled back, my hand clutching the doorknob for support. The room spun around me. For the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Mom, Daniel said, his voice weary. I think you should leave the room. Please. I looked at him, my vision blurring. Daniel, but his eyes didn't meet mine. I turned and walked out before the tears could fall. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The cameras were recording. The flash drive was hidden. The truth was there, waiting. But the hardest part wasn't proving Rachel's guilt. It was breaking through the wall she had built between me and my son. Morning came, heavy and gray. I went downstairs, determined to keep my composure. Jacob and Emily were eating cereal, chattering about school. Rachel stood at the stove, humming softly. Daniel sat at the table, his face tired, unreadable. I poured myself coffee, my hand steady despite the storm inside me. If Rachel thought she could break me, she was wrong. But then Emily's little voice pierced the quiet. Mommy, can I have some of Grandma's tea? The one in the special mug. My heart stopped. Rachel's eyes flickered toward me, then back to her daughter. She smiled sweetly. Of course, darling. Just a sip. And she reached for the amber bottle. The kitchen froze around me. The sound of the cereal crunching in Jacob's mouth, the hiss of the pan on the stove, even the faint hum of the refrigerator, all of it seemed to vanish under the weight of Rachel's hand reaching for that amber bottle. Emily clapped her little hands. Please, Mommy, I want to try Grandma's tea. No. The word ripped from my throat before I even thought about it. It was sharp, raw, almost feral. Everyone in the room jerked their heads toward me. Emily's smile faltered. Jacob looked startled. Daniel's brows furrowed. And Rachel, oh, Rachel, she didn't flinch. She didn't blush or fumble. She just smiled wider, as if she had been waiting for me to explode. Margaret, she said calmly, her fingers still resting lightly on the bottle. It's just a sip. Don't you trust me with my own children? Trust. The word echoed bitterly in my head. No, I didn't trust her. Not with my children. Not with my house. Not with my life. I forced a smile, though my chest was still heaving. Emily, sweetheart, I said gently, turning to her. Grandma's tea isn't for kids. It's got special herbs. They don't taste very good. You wouldn't like it. Emily pouted but shrugged, going back to her cereal. Jacob looked unconvinced, but said nothing. Rachel's hand lingered on the bottle a beat longer, her eyes never leaving mine. Then she slid it back into her cardigan pocket and turned back to the stove, humming as if nothing had happened. Daniel sipped his coffee, but his eyes flickered between us, troubled. I wondered what thoughts were racing behind that furrowed brow. Did he see it now? Did he catch the shift in Rachel's voice, the gleam in her eyes? Or was he still blind, still clinging to the illusion that she was the perfect wife. The rest of breakfast passed in silence, so heavy it felt like a storm pressing down on us. When the kids left for school, I stayed behind, washing the dishes slowly, my mind running like wildfire. Rachel had crossed the line. She wasn't just planning to harm me anymore. She was willing to involve the children, her own children, as pawns in her sick game. My heart clenched at the thought of Emily's innocent smile, Jacob's worried eyes. I couldn't wait any longer. That afternoon, I locked myself in my room and pulled up the camera feeds. My fingers trembled as I clicked through each angle. Hours of ordinary life flashed before me. The children playing, Rachel folding laundry, Daniel pacing the living room. And then I saw it. Rachel, standing in the kitchen late at night, the amber bottle in her hand. She poured the powder into a mug, stirred it, and set it at my usual place at the table. Then she looked straight into the camera. Not by accident this time. Directly. Her lips curved into the faintest smile before she walked away. I slammed the laptop shut, my pulse racing. She knew. She knew about the cameras. She was mocking me, daring me to act. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had proof. The flash drive, the bottle, the recordings. But proof meant nothing if no one believed me. And if Rachel suspected I was on to her, she might act sooner than I expected. That evening, I sat across from Daniel in the living room while Rachel put the kids to bed. My heart ached as I looked at my son, his tired eyes, the lines on his face that hadn't been there years ago. "Daniel," I said softly, "we need to talk?" He looked up, wary. "About what?" I hesitated. Then I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and held it out. "Please, just watch this. Don't say anything. Don't tell Rachel. Just see for yourself." He frowned, staring at the little black object as if it were poison itself. "What is this?" "Proof," I whispered. "The truth." He didn't take it. His hand stayed clenched in his lap. "Mom, if this is another one of your accusations." "Daniel, please," I begged, my voice breaking. "I'm not crazy. I'm not paranoid. She's dangerous. And if you don't believe me now, you'll regret it when it's too late." His face twisted with conflict, but before he could answer, Rachel's voice floated down the stairs. "What are you two whispering about?" My heart lurched. Daniel shoved the flash drive back toward me. His eyes panicked. "Not now," he hissed. I slipped it back into my pocket just as Rachel entered, smiling like a cat that had already caught the mouse. "Family meeting?" she asked, settling onto the arm of Daniel's chair, her hand resting possessively on his shoulder. "No," Daniel muttered quickly. "Just talking." Rachel's eyes flicked to me, sharp and knowing. Good. I'd hate to think I was being left out. The rest of the night passed in tense silence. I lay awake, clutching the flash drive like it was the only weapon I had left. The next morning, as I poured myself coffee, I caught Rachel watching me again. Not with a smile this time, but with something colder. Something final. And then, as she turned away, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. She wasn't slipping the amber bottle into her pocket anymore. It was gone. Hidden. Moved. She knew I'd seen it. And she wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. That evening, as I checked the cameras again, my laptop screen flickered. For a moment, the feed went black. Then static. Then, suddenly, the screen lit up with Rachel's face, close to the lens, her smile sharp as glass. "Looking for me, Margaret?" she whispered. And then the feed cut out completely. My blood turned to ice. She had found the cameras. Rachel's face on the laptop screen haunted me long after the feed cut out. Her eyes had been too calm, too deliberate. She wasn't guessing anymore, she knew. The cameras weren't a secret weapon anymore. They were a liability. I slammed the laptop shut and pressed my trembling hands against my face. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break free from my chest. She had taken control of the game. The next morning, the air in the house felt different. Heavy. Thick. Rachel floated through the kitchen like she always did. Her smile perfectly painted, her voice sweet. But beneath the sugar was poison, and I could feel it with every word she spoke. "Margaret," she said brightly, sliding a plate of pancakes onto the table. You've been spending so much time on your computer lately. What's keeping you busy? I forced a smile, gripping my mug tightly. Just organizing old photos. Her eyes sparkled knowingly. You should be careful. Technology can be so confusing at your age. Wouldn't want you to accidentally delete something important. My stomach dropped. Daniel chuckled softly, thinking it was just a harmless comment. But I knew better. She was mocking me, warning me. Throughout the day, little things began to change. The children, usually so affectionate, seemed distant. Jacob barely met my eyes, and Emily clung to Rachel more than usual. When I asked Jacob if he wanted me to help with his homework, he shook his head. Mom says you're tired a lot. Maybe you should rest. I felt the sting deep in my chest. Rachel was poisoning them too, not with pills, but with words. Whisper by whisper, she was turning my family against me. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, Rachel reached across the table and touched Daniel's hand. I've been worried about your mom, she said softly. She seems unsettled lately. Don't you think? Daniel's fork paused midway to his mouth. His eyes flicked to me, then back to her. She's fine, he muttered, though his tone lacked conviction. Rachel sighed, shaking her head. I don't know. Last night, I thought I heard her talking to herself in her room. And the other day, well, I don't want to sound cruel, but I found one of the cameras she bought. My heart stopped. Daniel's head snapped up. Camera? She nodded, looking properly distressed. Yes, hidden in the bookshelf. I almost knocked it over by accident. When I asked her about it, she said it was just security. But doesn't that seem strange to you? Recording us? Recording the children? All eyes turned to me. Emily's spoon clattered into her bowl. Jacob frowned. Daniel's gaze was sharp, suspicious. My throat felt dry. I wanted to scream, to throw the flash drive onto the table, to shout the truth until the walls shook. But I couldn't. Not like this. Not with the children staring at me like I was some strange creature they didn't recognize. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. I bought them because I didn't feel safe. Not with... Rachel cut me off, her voice soft, full of pity. Not with me, you mean? Silence. Daniel pushed his chair back, the legs scraping against the floor. Mom, what the hell is going on? I opened my mouth, desperate to explain, but the words tangled in my throat. If I told him the truth now, Rachel would spin it, twist it, make it sound like madness. Rachel dabbed her lips with a napkin and stood, her shoulders squared, her performance flawless. I've tried so hard to make this a happy home, she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. But I can't live like this, being spied on, accused. She looked at Daniel with wide, tearful eyes. I think your mother needs help. The knife twisted in my chest. Help. That word, wrapped in false concern, was her deadliest weapon yet. Daniel rubbed his temples, his voice low. Maybe she's right, Mom. Maybe you're overwhelmed. I slammed my hand on the table, the sound startling even me. No, I am not crazy, and I don't need help. What I need is for you to wake up, Daniel. She's trying to destroy me. Can't you see that? The children gasped. Daniel's face hardened. Rachel's lips curved into the faintest, victorious smile. Dinner ended in silence. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the flash drive. It felt heavier than ever, like it carried not just proof, but the entire weight of my family's future. I knew what Rachel was doing. She was cornering me, isolating me, pushing me into a box where every word I said would sound like paranoia. If I didn't act soon, I wouldn't just lose my home. I'd lose Daniel. I'd lose Jacob and Emily. I'd lose everything. I tucked the flash drive back into its hiding spot, determined to protect it at all costs. I was still thinking of where to move it when the sound came. Soft footsteps in the hallway. The doorknob rattled. Slowly, carefully. I froze, my hand halfway to the drawer. Then the door creaked open. Rachel stood in the doorway, her silhouette dark against the hall light. Her smile gleamed like a blade in the shadows. Still awake, Margaret? She whispered. We need to talk. Rachel lingered in the doorway like a shadow that refused to leave. Her smile was too sweet, too calm, the kind of smile that pretended to be kindness but dripped poison beneath the surface. I sat up straighter in bed, clutching the blanket like a shield. What do you want, Rachel? I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my pulse was racing. She stepped into the room, closing the door softly behind her. The click of the latch sounded final, like a lock being turned. She moved closer, her step slow, deliberate, as if she were stalking prey. What I want, she said in a whisper that carried across the room, is for you to stop making this so difficult. My fingers twitched toward the nightstand drawer where the flash drive was hidden. But I didn't move. Not yet. I don't know what you mean, I replied. Her laugh was low, humorless. Oh, come on, Margaret. You're too smart to play dumb. The cameras, the little act at dinner, the way you look at me when you think no one's watching. You know exactly what I'm capable of. Her words slithered through the air, heavy and undeniable. She wasn't pretending anymore. Not here. Not when Daniel and the children weren't listening. You've been poisoning this family, I hissed. With lies, with manipulation. I see what you're doing, Rachel. She tilted her head, eyes gleaming. Do you? Or do you just think you do? Because from where I stand, everyone else sees a confused old woman. A burden. Someone who's losing her grip. She leaned closer, her voice dropping lower. And soon, that's all Daniel will see too. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs, but I forced myself not to look away. You can't hide the truth forever. I have proof. Her smile widened, cruel and sharp. Oh, you mean your little flash drives? She glanced at the nightstand, then back at me. You really think hiding them around the house will save you? Please, do you know how easy it would be to make those disappear? One mistake, one slip, and your precious evidence is gone. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. She knew. Maybe she hadn't found the others yet, but she was circling close. I won't let you win, I said firmly, though my hands were trembling under the blanket. You might fool Daniel for now, but the truth always comes out. Her eyes darkened. The truth is whatever people believe. And right now, Daniel believes me. She straightened, smoothing down the front of her silk robe, as if she hadn't just threatened me. But I'll give you one last chance, Margaret. Stop watching me. Stop interfering. Or I'll make sure you regret it. The room went cold. What does that mean? I demanded. She paused at the door, turning back just enough for me to see her smirk. It means that you're not as untouchable as you think. Accidents happen all the time, especially to people your age. My blood froze. Then she slipped out into the hall, leaving me shaking in the silence. I sat there for what felt like hours, listening to every creak of the house, every gust of wind against the window. Sleep was impossible. Her words echoed in my mind. Accidents happen. I knew then that I was in more danger than I'd admitted, even to myself. It wasn't just about manipulation anymore. Rachel was hinting at something darker, something physical. And if I wasn't careful, I could be the next accident in this house. The next day, I tried to keep myself busy. I baked cookies with Emily, helped Jacob with his math homework, and even joined Daniel in the garden for a while. On the surface, it looked like a normal day. But beneath it, tension was simmering. Rachel's eyes followed me everywhere, sharp and calculating. Every smile she gave me was a warning. Every glance was a threat. When the children went upstairs that evening, Daniel asked me to sit down with him in the living room. Rachel sat beside him, her hand on his arm, her expression full of false concern. Mom, Daniel began carefully, Rachel and I talked last night. We're worried about you. Here it came. Rachel squeezed his arm, her eyes flicking toward me like daggers. We think it might be best if you spoke to someone. A doctor, maybe. Just to make sure everything's all right. My chest tightened. You think I'm losing my mind. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. No one's saying that. We just want to help. Rachel leaned forward, her voice gentle but dripping with victory. It's nothing to be ashamed of, Margaret. Everyone needs help sometimes. Don't you want peace? Don't you want to stop feeling so paranoid? I wanted to scream, to stand up and shake him until he saw the truth. But instead, I sat there in silence, my nails digging into my palms. Because I knew if I protested too loudly, it would only prove her point. So I forced a calm smile. I'll think about it. Rachel's eyes glittered. She had won this round and she knew it. But inside, A different fire was burning. If she thought she could bully me into surrender, she was wrong. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for Daniel, for the children, for the family she was trying to destroy. That night, after everyone went to bed, I slipped into the hallway. My heart raced as I crept toward the bookshelf where one of the other flash drives was hidden. I had to move it, had to make sure she didn't get her hands on it. The house was quiet, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. I reached behind the row of old novels, my fingers brushing the cold metal of the drive. Relief washed over me as I closed my hand around it. But just as I turned to leave, a sound froze me in place. A soft click. The camera I'd hidden across the hall blinked red. Someone had turned it on. And standing in the shadows of the hallway, watching me was Rachel. The red light blinked like a warning siren, and my blood turned to ice. Rachel stood there in the shadows, her arms folded neatly, her lips curved into that smug smile I'd grown to hate. "Well, well," she purred, her voice soft but sharp enough to cut. "Look who's sneaking around at night." I clutched the flash drive in my fist, hiding it behind my back like a guilty child. "I couldn't sleep," I stammered, though my voice shook. "I was just—" She stepped forward, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. "Just what? Rearranging books?" Or maybe her eyes flicked to my hand. Maybe hiding something. My throat went dry. "It's nothing. Just an old photo I tucked away." Her laughter was low, humorless. "Margaret, you really should give up this act. It's getting embarrassing." I forced myself to stand tall, even though my legs were trembling. "I don't know what you think you're doing, Rachel, but I won't let you win. I won't let you tear this family apart." Her expression darkened, and for the first time, she dropped the sugary facade completely. "Tear this family apart," she spat. "I built this family. Daniel is where he is because of me. Those kids adore me. And you," she jabbed a finger toward my chest, "you're just in the way. A relic. A bitter old woman clinging to a past that's gone." The word stung, but I didn't flinch. "If you think I'm weak, you're wrong. I have proof of what you've been doing. Proof Daniel won't be able to ignore." Her eyes narrowed, flickering to my closed fist. She stepped closer, so close I could feel her breath against my cheek. "Then maybe I should take it." My grip tightened. "You'll have to rip it from my hands." She tilted her head, studying me like a predator sizing up prey. Then, suddenly she smiled again, sweet and false. "You know what the funny thing is? Even if you showed Daniel your little videos, who do you think he'd believe? The loyal wife who's been by his side for years? Or the paranoid mother who spies on her own family?" The weight of her words pressed on me, but I didn't back down. "The truth always wins, Rachel. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day." Her smile faded into a thin line. "You don't have that much time, Margaret. And accidents happen, especially late at night, when no one's awake to hear the fall." A chill crawled down my spine. Before I could react, she reached out and shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, my hand slamming against the bookshelf. Pain shot up my arm, and the flash drive nearly slipped from my grasp. She leaned in close, her voice a venomous whisper. "Careful, Margaret. Wouldn't want you to hurt yourself." My chest heaved as I struggled to steady myself. "You think you can scare me? You'll regret this." Her smirk returned, cool and confident. "The only thing I regret is not dealing with you sooner." With that, she spun on her heel and glided down the hall, her robe trailing behind her like a ghost. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, the flash drive still clutched in my shaking hand. For a long moment, the house was silent again, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock. But the silence felt different now, dangerous, like a storm waiting just beyond the horizon. I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Rachel wasn't just threatening me anymore. She was planning something bigger. And if I didn't find a way to outsmart her soon, I might not live long enough to see Daniel open his eyes. I tucked the flash drive into the pocket of my robe and crept back to my room, locking the door behind me. Sleep was out of the question. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each darker than the last. Rachel was escalating. If she pushed me tonight, what would she do tomorrow? And how long until Daniel stopped seeing me as a nuisance and started seeing me as a problem to get rid of? The answer, I feared, was soon. And then, just as I was about to sit down, the sound came. A faint scratching. At my door. Slow. Deliberate. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The scratching grew louder, closer. And then, the knob began to turn. The knob twisted slowly, the metal groaning like it hadn't been touched in years. My breath caught. My heart hammered against my ribs so violently that I pressed a hand to my chest, afraid Rachel might hear it through the door. "Who's there?" My voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. No answer. The knob jiggled again. A little harder this time. I backed away, clutching the flash drive in my fist. The room felt smaller by the second, shadows pressing in from all sides. And then silence. I stood frozen, staring at the door, waiting for it to swing open. But it didn't. The knob stopped turning. The scratching stopped. Nothing. For a long, suffocating moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But then, just as I started to move closer, there came a soft knock. Not frantic, not polite, just deliberate. Margaret. It wasn't Rachel's voice. It was Daniel's. Relief and dread tangled in my chest. Relief that it wasn't her. Dread, because I knew she might have sent him. "Mom, it's me," he said again, his voice muffled through the door. "Open up." I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me to keep the door locked. But this was my son, the little boy I had raised, the man I had loved with all my heart. Slowly, I unlocked the door and pulled it open. Daniel stood in the hall, his face tired, his eyes shadowed with worry. "What are you doing up?" he asked softly. "It's nearly 2 in the morning." I swallowed hard, trying to calm my racing heart. "I could ask you the same thing." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Rachel said she heard noises. She was worried." Of course she was. She was always worried. I stepped aside and gestured for him to come in. He hesitated for a moment, then crossed the threshold, glancing around the room like he expected to find something. His eyes lingered on the laptop, then the bookshelf, then me. "Mom," he said carefully, "we need to talk." I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the blanket like a lifeline. "Then talk." He sighed and sat across from me. "I don't know what's going on with you, but Rachel, she thinks you're struggling. And I'm starting to wonder if she's right." The words cut deeper than any knife. "You think I'm crazy." He flinched. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." Silence filled the room. My chest ached. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him awake, to force him to see the woman he married for what she really was. But instead, I took a shaky breath and tried a different tactic. "Daniel," I said softly, "do you remember when you were 8 years old and you broke your arm falling from that tree in the backyard?" His brows furrowed. "Of course. You cried all the way to the hospital. But I sat in that car with you, holding your hand the whole time. I never let go. Not once. Because that's what a mother does. She protects her child, even when he's too scared, too hurt, too angry to see it." His expression softened just a little. "That's all I'm trying to do now," I continued, my voice trembling. "Protect you. Protect Jacob. Protect Emily. Rachel isn't who you think she is. She's dangerous, Daniel. Please, you have to trust me." For a moment, I thought I saw doubt flicker in his eyes, a tiny crack in the wall she had built between us. But then he shook his head. "I can't," he said quietly. "Rachel hasn't given me a reason not to trust her. You have." The knife twisted. He stood, running a hand through his hair. "Just try to rest, okay? I'll handle things." Before I could reply, he left, closing the door gently behind him. I sat there in the darkness, the flash drive still clutched in my hand, tears burning in my eyes. I was losing him. Bit by bit, day by day, Rachel was pulling him further from me. But I couldn't give up. Not now. The next morning, I forced myself to act normal. I made pancakes for the kids, asked about school, smiled when I didn't feel like smiling. But all the while, Rachel's eyes were on me, sharp and watchful. She knew I hadn't broken. Not yet. That afternoon, as Daniel took the children to soccer practice, Rachel cornered me in the kitchen. Her lips curved into that perfect practice smile. Did you sleep well, Margaret? She asked, her tone dripping with false concern. Like a baby, I lied. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Good. You'll need your rest. Big changes are coming. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? She tapped her chin thoughtfully. Oh, nothing you need to worry about. But since you seem so uncomfortable here, I think it's time we start looking into other options for you. Maybe a nice facility. Somewhere you'll be cared for. The blood drained from my face. You're not serious. Her smile widened. Dead serious. I gripped the counter to steady myself. Daniel would never agree to that. Her eyes glittered. Daniel agrees to whatever I tell him to. You'll see. And with that, she turned and walked away, humming softly to herself. I stood frozen in the kitchen, the walls closing in around me. She wasn't just threatening anymore. She was planning, scheming, and if I didn't stop her soon, she would succeed. That night, I sat in my room, staring at the flash drive. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't wait for Daniel to believe me. I couldn't wait for Rachel to slip up. I had to take the evidence to someone else, someone who would listen. The police. The thought both terrified and comforted me. But it was the only way. I tucked the flash drive into the pocket of my cardigan and made my plan. Tomorrow morning, I would drive to the station, quietly, without anyone knowing. But as I lay down, my body finally heavy with exhaustion, I didn't notice the shadow at my door. Didn't hear the soft creak as it opened. Didn't feel the hand that slipped into my nightstand. When I woke the next morning, the flash drive was gone. I woke to sunlight spilling through the curtains and the sound of birds outside my window. For a moment, I let myself believe it was an ordinary morning. That Daniel was still my little boy asleep down the hall. That breakfast would be full of laughter, that my family was whole. But then I reached for the nightstand, and my blood turned to ice. The drawer was open, empty. The flash drive was gone. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, my pulse roaring in my ears. I tore through the drawer, pulling everything out, my glasses, an old photo of my husband, a pen I'd been using for crossword puzzles. Nothing. Panic clawed at me. I searched under the bed, behind the dresser, even inside my pillowcase. But deep down, I already knew. Rachel had taken it. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling in my lap. All my proof, all the hours of footage, all the moments that could have saved me was in her hands now. And if I knew Rachel, she wouldn't just destroy it. She'd twist it, use it against me. A knock at the door made me jump. Mom, Daniel's voice. I scrambled to shove the mess back into the drawer. Yes. He pushed the door open, already dressed for work. Rachel's making breakfast. You coming down? I forced a smile, hiding the storm inside me. Of course. He nodded, distracted, and left. I sat there for a long moment, my mind racing. I had to act quickly. If Rachel had the drive, she could spin the footage any way she wanted. She could show Daniel pieces out of context, make me look like a paranoid old woman spying on her family. By the time I finally went downstairs, the smell of bacon filled the kitchen. Emily and Jacob sat at the table, laughing about something on Emily's tablet. Daniel was sipping coffee, and Rachel stood at the stove, humming cheerfully. She turned as I walked in, her smile wide, her eyes glittering with triumph. Good morning, Margaret. Did you sleep well? I nodded stiffly, taking a seat. Fine. She set a plate in front of me, then leaned down, her voice low enough that only I could hear. Looking for something? My stomach lurched. I forced myself not to react, not to give her the satisfaction. I don't know what you mean. She straightened, her smile never faltering. Of course you don't. The rest of breakfast passed in a blur. My food tasted like ash. Every laugh from the children felt like a knife. Rachel was winning, and I was running out of time. After the kids left for school and Daniel headed to work, I cornered Rachel in the living room. Give it back, I hissed. She arched a brow, feigning innocence. Give what back? You know damn well what. The flash drive. Her smirk widened. Oh, you mean this? She pulled it from her pocket, twirling it between her fingers. I have to admit, Margaret, you've been very clever. Hiding cameras, collecting footage. But you made one mistake. My fist clenched. And what's that? You underestimated me. She slid the drive back into her pocket. This little toy won't save you. In fact, her eyes gleamed. It's going to destroy you. Cold dread washed over me. What are you planning? She leaned close, her breath warm against my ear. You'll see. And with that, she walked away, leaving me trembling with rage and fear. The hours crawled by. I paced the house, my mind spinning with possibilities. Should I tell Daniel everything? Risk him thinking I was delusional? Should I go to the police with nothing but my word? Or should I try to outsmart Rachel another way? By the time Daniel returned home that evening, my nerves were frayed. I sat in the living room, pretending to read, while Rachel prepared dinner. Family meeting, she announced cheerfully, carrying a tray to the table. My stomach dropped. We all gathered around. Daniel looked puzzled, the kids curious. Rachel stood at the head of the table, her smile radiant. I found something yesterday, she began, pulling the flash drive from her pocket. My blood turned to ice. Something very troubling. Daniel frowned. What's that? She held it up. Your mother has been recording us. Secretly. Hiding cameras around the house. Gasps from the children. Daniel's face darkened. Rachel, that can't be, he started. Oh, but it is, she interrupted smoothly. Would you like to see? She plugged the drive into her laptop, the screen facing the family. My heart pounded as video clips appeared. Rachel cooking in the kitchen, Daniel reading in the living room, the kids playing. She clicked one. There I was on the footage, crouching in the hallway, adjusting a camera. See, Rachel said, her voice trembling with false hurt. She's been spying on all of us. I didn't want to believe it, but here's the proof. Daniel's jaw tightened. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Jacob whispered, Grandma. My world tilted. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, but the words caught in my throat. Rachel looked at me, her eyes shining with victory. Why, Margaret? Why would you do this to us? And in that moment, I knew she had turned the family completely against me. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I still had one final card to play. The room fell into silence after Rachel's little performance. The kids stared at me like I was some sort of monster. Daniel rubbed his forehead, his face dark with confusion and anger. Rachel stood tall, playing the perfect victim, her eyes wet with crocodile tears, as if she were barely holding herself together. It was a scene out of a nightmare, except this nightmare was real. Mom, Daniel finally said, his voice low and heavy. Is this true? Have you been spying on us? My heart sank. I wanted to scream, to tell him everything. About Rachel's whispers on the stairs, about the forged documents, about the way she had been weaving her web around him for years. But if I blurted it all out now, in this moment, Rachel would only tighten her grip. She had the evidence in her hand, twisted just enough to make me look guilty. So instead, I took a slow breath and looked at my son. Daniel, I whispered, my voice trembling. It's not what it looks like. Rachel let out a sharp laugh. Oh, please, Margaret. Isn't that what they all say when they're caught red-handed? She turned to Daniel, her voice softening like honey. I didn't want to show you this, but I couldn't hide it anymore. For months she's been sneaking around, filming us. What kind of person does that? Emily sniffled. Grandma, why would you do that? My throat burned. I had no answer that would make sense to them. Not yet. Daniel pushed his chair back, standing abruptly. I need some air, he muttered, storming out the back door. The kids followed, Rachel gathering them close like a protective mother hen, whispering soothing words. I sat alone at the table, my plate untouched, my hands trembling in my lap. When the house finally quieted, Rachel returned to the dining room. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, a sly smile tugging at her lips. Well, she said softly, that went about as well as I hoped. I glared at her. You're destroying this family. She tilted her head, feigning sympathy. No, Margaret, you did that. You should have stayed in your little retirement home, knitted scarves, tended to your roses. But you had to interfere. And now, she tapped the flash drive in her pocket. Now you're finished. She turned to leave, but I called after her. You won't win. She glanced over her shoulder, her smile sharp as a knife. Watch me. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I couldn't let her win. But how? She had the drive. She had Daniel's trust. She had the children's sympathy. But she also had something else, arrogance. And arrogance, I knew, could be used against her. I spent the next morning quietly. I made coffee, I watered the plants, I hummed as though nothing had happened. Rachel kept watching me, waiting for me to crumble. But I didn't. Instead, I started plotting. The truth was, the flash drive she stole wasn't the only one. I had a second copy, hidden in a place she'd never think to look. And on that copy, footage she hadn't seen. Footage she wouldn't want anyone to see. But I couldn't use it yet. Not until the time was right. Not until Rachel was so sure of her victory that she wouldn't see the trap snapping shut. So I played my part. At breakfast, I apologized to the children. I know it looked bad, I said softly. I'm sorry if I scared you. Emily wouldn't meet my eyes. Jacob shrugged, but his little shoulders were tense. Rachel smiled like a queen who just conquered new land. Daniel sat in silence, still wrestling with the weight of it all. For the rest of the week, I acted subdued. I let Rachel think she had broken me. I let Daniel's distance grow. I let the children drift. And all the while, I was quietly weaving my own web. One evening, when Rachel stepped out to take a phone call, I slipped into her room. I searched her drawers, her bags, her closet, and what I found made my blood boil. Documents, bank papers, contracts with Daniel's signature on them, except the signatures weren't his. They were forged. And if I had guessed right, Rachel planned to use them soon. I snapped photos of everything with my phone and slid the papers back exactly as I found them. My hands were shaking, my pulse racing, but I kept my face calm when Rachel returned, smiling as though nothing had happened. That night, as I lay awake, I thought about Daniel, about how much I loved him, about how blind he'd been to Rachel's poison, about how easily betrayal slips into a family when kindness is mistaken for weakness. And I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for him, for Emily, for Jacob, for the family I refused to let Rachel steal from me. The next morning, I began setting my trap. I baked cookies with Emily, asking her about school. I played chess with Jacob, letting him win. I sat with Daniel in the living room, asking about work. Slowly, carefully, I began to stitch myself back into their lives. Rachel noticed. Oh, she noticed. Her smile grew tighter, her eyes sharper. She could feel me regaining ground, and it unsettled her. Margaret, she said one evening as we cleared the dishes, don't think for a second your little act is fooling anyone. I gave her my sweetest smile. Act? Oh, Rachel, I don't know what you mean. She narrowed her eyes. I'll crush you before you have the chance. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Then you'd better hurry. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt cross her face, but she shook it off quickly. You won't make it that far. And that's when I knew she was planning something. Something big. That night, I checked on the children before bed, kissing their foreheads, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Then I went to my room and pulled out the second flash drive, holding it in my hands like a weapon. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow, everything changes. But I underestimated Rachel. Because the next morning, as the sun rose over the quiet streets of Ohio, Daniel burst into my room, his face pale, his eyes wide. Mom, he said, his voice shaking, we need to talk. Right now. Behind him, I saw Rachel standing in the hallway, smiling. And in that instant, I knew. She had made her move. Daniel stood in my doorway, his face pale, his jaw tight, his fists clenched at his sides. Behind him, Rachel leaned casually against the wall, her arms folded, that smug little smile playing on her lips. Mom, Daniel said, his voice trembling with anger. We need to talk. Now. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. Of course, I said softly. What's this about? Rachel stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Daniel's arm. Go on, honey. She deserves to hear it from you. Daniel shot her a look, then turned back to me. Rachel showed me the papers, the spying, the lies, and now his voice cracked, now the forged signatures. My blood ran cold. She had turned the discovery around on me. Forged signatures? I repeated. Rachel nodded gravely, as though it pained her to even say the words. Yes, Margaret. We found documents, contracts with Daniel's name. Only, she held up a sheet of paper, shaking her head in mock sadness. It's clear you tried to sign them yourself, to make it look like I was stealing from him. I gasped. That's not true. Rachel, you're the one forging his name. I saw the papers. Daniel cut me off. Mom, enough. His voice was sharp, louder than I'd ever heard it. The children came running from their rooms, eyes wide, standing frozen in the hallway. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling. You're my mother. I love you. But this has to stop. You're tearing this family apart. My throat closed. Daniel, please listen to me. But Rachel stepped in, her voice honey-sweet. No, Margaret. You listen. We've tried to be patient. We've tried to help you. But you just keep scheming. If you can't respect us, then maybe, she glanced at Daniel, her eyes gleaming. Maybe it's time you moved out. The words hit me like a physical blow. Moved out. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't defend me. He just looked at me with that mixture of sorrow and disappointment that cuts deeper than any knife. Mom, he whispered. Maybe Rachel's right. Maybe it's best if you stay somewhere else for a while. I felt the ground shift beneath me. My own son. My flesh and blood. He was choosing her over me. Rachel wrapped her arm around him, resting her head against his shoulder. We'll help her find a place, she said sweetly, her eyes locked on mine with cold triumph. It'll be better for everyone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip that smug smile off her face. But instead, I nodded slowly, my hands trembling at my sides. If that's what you want, I whispered. Daniel's shoulders sagged with relief, as though he had finally put down a heavy burden. Rachel hugged him tighter, her eyes never leaving mine. In that moment, I understood. This was her big move, her endgame. She wanted me out of the house, cut off, powerless, and Daniel had just given her exactly what she wanted. But what Rachel didn't realize was that her little victory had just lit a fire inside me. That night, I packed a small bag. Clothes, a toothbrush, a few personal things. The children hovered in the doorway, watching silently. Emily's eyes were wet. Jacob clutched a stuffed bear. Grandma, Emily whispered, are you leaving forever? My heart cracked. I knelt down, pulling them both close. No, sweetheart, I said softly. I'll always be with you. Always. But right now, Grandma has some things to take care of. They clung to me, and I had to force myself to let go. Rachel stood nearby, pretending to dab at her eyes with a tissue. It's for the best, she murmured. Daniel carried my bag to the car. He kissed my forehead before closing the trunk. I just need some peace, Mom. I hope you understand. I nodded, swallowing my pain. I understand. But as I drove away from that house, tears blurring my vision, I whispered a promise to myself. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. I checked into a small motel on the edge of town. The room was dim and smelled faintly of mildew, but it was quiet, and for the first time in weeks I could think. I laid the second flash drive on the nightstand and stared at it. This was my weapon, my proof, my last chance to save my family. But I couldn't just run back and show Daniel now. Rachel had poisoned his mind too deeply. No, I needed to be smart. I needed to let her arrogance undo her. So I began to plan. The next morning, I visited an old friend, Martha, a retired paralegal who'd helped me and my late husband with paperwork years ago. She lived in a cozy little house filled with books and cats, her sharp mind still intact despite her age. When I showed her the photos of the forged documents, her eyes narrowed. This is serious, Margaret, she said. If your daughter-in-law's forging Daniel's signature, she's committing fraud. Maybe even theft. I nodded. I need to prove it. But I can't let her know I'm onto her. Martha tapped her chin, thinking. Then you'll need a witness. Someone neutral. Someone Rachel can't manipulate. Her words planted a seed in my mind. That night, back in the motel, I stared at the flash drive again. And then I knew what I had to do. I'd let Rachel think she'd won. I'd let her bask in her little victory. But when the time came, when she was at her most confident. I'd pull the rug out from under her. The thought steadied me, strengthened me. For the first time in days, I slept soundly. But peace doesn't last long when you're at war with someone like Rachel. Because 2 days later, as I returned to the motel after a walk, I found an envelope slipped under my door. My hand shook as I tore it open. Inside was a legal notice, an eviction order. Rachel hadn't just pushed me out of Daniel's house. She had gone to court, claimed I was unstable, and was now trying to have me banned from even coming near the property. And at the bottom of the notice, under Daniel's name, was a signature. A forged one. My son didn't even know. My chest burned with fury. Rachel was tightening the noose, step by step. And if I didn't act soon, I'd lose everything, my home, my family, even my dignity. But as I stared at that piece of paper, my fear turned into something else. Resolve. Because now I had proof. Concrete proof. And I knew exactly how I was going to use it. I folded the notice carefully, tucked it into my purse, and whispered to myself, Rachel has no idea what's coming. I sat in the dim motel room staring at the eviction notice, the forged signature at the bottom burning into my brain. Rachel had finally overplayed her hand. She thought she was brilliant, sliding this paper under my door like some cruel magician's trick. But in her arrogance, she left me exactly what I needed. Proof that she had gone too far. I folded the paper carefully, tucking it into my purse, and whispered to myself, game on. The next morning, I drove straight to Martha's house. She was waiting in her doorway, a mug of coffee in hand, her sharp eyes narrowing as soon as she saw my face. Well, she asked. I held out the paper. She's trying to evict me. Martha set her mug down, took the document, and read it slowly. When she reached the bottom, she let out a low whistle. That's not your son's signature. Not even close. And if she filed this, she's committed fraud. Big time. I clenched my fists. Then we use it. Martha smiled, a glint of admiration in her eyes. Now you're talking. We spent the afternoon going over everything. The photos of the forged documents, the eviction notice, even the flash drive I'd hidden from Rachel, with its damning footage of her whispering poison into Daniel's ear when she thought no one was listening. Piece by piece, Martha helped me build a case. Not just a legal one, but a strategy. You can't hit her head on yet, Martha warned. She'll spin it. She's too good at that. You need to wait until she's on record, until she makes a move she can't slither out of. Then you strike. I nodded slowly. And when I strike, I won't miss. That night, back in my motel room, I sat with the flash drive in my hands. I thought of my husband, his laughter, his patience, the way he used to tell me, kindness is strength, Margaret. But never mistake kindness for weakness. For years, I had let Rachel mistake my kindness for weakness. I'd let her smile at me while sharpening her knives behind my back. But now I was done being the victim. The next few days, I played my part carefully. I stopped calling Daniel, stopped visiting the house. Rachel wanted me gone, and I gave her the illusion she had succeeded. Meanwhile, I worked quietly with Martha, making copies of everything, preparing affidavits, and even contacting a local attorney Martha trusted. The attorney's name was Mr. Harlan, a graying man with kind eyes but a mind like a steel trap. After I showed him the eviction notice, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. This, he said firmly, is fraud. We can challenge it in court. And if we connect it to the other forged documents, we may even be looking at criminal charges. Hearing those words was like breathing for the first time in weeks. Finally, someone believed me. But I knew better than to celebrate too soon. Rachel was clever. If she sensed even a hint of what I was doing, she would twist it, bury it, or worse. So I kept quiet. I smiled at the motel clerk when I passed him. I baked cookies for Martha's grandchildren when they visited. I even called Emily and Jacob one evening, just to hear their voices. Grandma, Emily whispered on the phone. Are you really not coming back? I swallowed hard. Not yet, sweetheart. But don't worry. I'll see you soon. She hesitated. Mommy says you're sick in the head. The words cut deep, but I forced my voice to stay steady. Don't you ever believe that. I love you and I always will. And one day, you'll understand everything. We said goodnight, and I hung up, staring at the wall until my eyes blurred. Rachel was poisoning them, just like she had poisoned Daniel. That was the part that broke me the most, watching my grandchildren get caught in the crossfire of a war they didn't even understand. But the thought also steeled my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about saving them from her grip. The storm broke sooner than I expected. 1 week after receiving the eviction notice, I got a call from Daniel. His voice was flat, almost mechanical. "Mom, Rachel and I were filing the papers. You're not allowed near the house anymore. I'm sorry, but this is how it has to be." My heart twisted. "Daniel, please." He cut me off. "I can't keep doing this. You spying, you accusing Rachel, it's tearing us apart. I have a family to protect." I bit back the urge to scream. "She's lying to you, Daniel. Can't you see that?" A pause. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd listen. But then his voice hardened. "Goodbye, Mom." The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of the motel room, tears streaming down my face, rage and heartbreak mingling in my chest. Rachel had him. Completely. Or so she thought. Because what Daniel didn't know, what Rachel didn't even suspect, was that I had already spoken to an attorney. I had already built my case. And by the time she tried to use those forged papers in court, I'd be ready. But the timing had to be perfect. I couldn't rush. I had to let Rachel think she had already won. 3 nights later, I returned to the neighborhood under the cover of dark. I parked down the street, watching from the car as lights glowed in the windows of Daniel's house. I could see shadows moving inside. Rachel laughing with Daniel, the kids running down the hallway. For a moment, the sight of it almost broke me. That should have been my family, safe and whole. Instead, I was the outcast, the villain in Rachel's twisted story. But then I remembered Martha's words, "Wait until she's on record." And suddenly, my sorrow turned to fire. Because in 2 days, Rachel had scheduled a meeting with Daniel's financial advisor, using the forged contracts as her golden ticket. She didn't know I knew. She didn't think I had anyone watching her. But I did. Martha's nephew worked at the same bank. Quiet, trustworthy, and very curious when he saw Rachel trying to shuffle paperwork behind Daniel's back. And when Rachel walked into that office with her forged documents, she wouldn't just be on record. She'd be walking straight into my trap. I drove back to the motel, my hand steady on the wheel, my chest full of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. But the next morning, just as I was starting to believe I had the upper hand, there was a knock at my door. I opened it slowly and froze. Rachel was standing there. Her smile was wide, her eyes cold. "Good morning, Margaret," she said sweetly. "Mind if I come in?" Rachel leaned against the motel doorway like she owned the place, her arms folded, her smile sharp as a blade. The morning sun caught in her hair, making her look almost angelic, if angels were capable of the kind of cruelty she carried in her veins. "May I come in?" she asked again, tilting her head. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to stay calm. I stepped aside, my voice even. "If you must." She walked in like a queen inspecting her domain, her eyes flicking over the shabby furniture, the stained carpet, the sagging curtains. "Charming," she murmured, wrinkling her nose. "I suppose it suits you." I closed the door quietly behind her. "Why are you here, Rachel?" She turned, her smile widening. "To see how the other half lives, of course, and to remind you that you've lost. Daniel has filed the papers. The kids barely mention you anymore. You're forgotten." Her words stung, but I didn't let it show. If that's true, why bother coming here? For a fraction of a second, something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance, maybe even fear. Then she covered it with a laugh. "Because I like to win completely, Margaret. Not just a little. I like to see the person I've beaten crumble." I crossed my arms, leaning against the dresser. "Is that what you think this is? That you've beaten me?" Her smile faltered just enough to tell me I'd hit a nerve. I lowered my voice, steady and cold. "You're the one who's afraid, Rachel. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't need to see me broken. You'd just move on with your little lies and let time bury me. But you can't, because deep down you know it isn't over." Her jaw tightened. "You're delusional." I stepped closer. "Am I?" For a long moment, we stared at each other. the air between us crackling with all the unspoken threats and hidden truths. Finally, Rachel let out a sharp laugh, breaking the tension. "Believe whatever you want," she said. "But know this, you won't be stepping foot back in that house. Not now. Not ever. I'll make sure of it." I tilted my head. "Funny. That sounds like fear talking." Her smile snapped back into place, but her eyes were blazing. "You think you're clever, Margaret. But I've seen your type before. Old, bitter, desperate for relevance. You think you can outsmart me? Please." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She tossed it onto the bed. "Take a look," she said. I unfolded it with trembling hands. My chest tightened as I read the words. It was a restraining order, filed in my name. If granted, it would keep me from seeing Daniel, Emily, or Jacob at all. Rachel smiled sweetly. "That's right. Soon you won't just be out of the house. You'll be out of their lives completely. By the time I'm done, those kids won't even remember your face." Something inside me snapped. My hands clenched the paper, so tightly it crumpled. My voice shook, not with fear, but with fury. "You won't win, Rachel. Not this time. You've gone too far." She leaned closer, her perfume sickly sweet, her words a dagger. "I haven't even started." Then she turned on her heel and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, the crumpled restraining order in my fist, my heart pounding. She thought she'd cornered me. She thought she'd taken everything. But what she didn't realize was that she had just given me the final piece of the puzzle. Because by filing this order, by putting it on record, she had created exactly the opportunity Martha told me to wait for. She had put herself on record, and that meant the trap was ready to close. I sat down on the bed, smoothed the paper out, and whispered into the quiet room. "Rachel, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." The courtroom smelled of old wood and polished floors, the kind of smell that carried weight, history, and judgment. I sat at the long oak table, my hands folded neatly in front of me. My heart pounded, but my face was calm. Rachel was across from me, immaculate as always, dressed in a cream suit that screamed money and power. Daniel sat beside her, his jaw tight, his eyes avoiding mine. Behind them, Emily and Jacob shifted nervously on the bench, looking too small for the heaviness of the room. The judge, a stern woman with steel-gray hair, entered and called the room to order. Rachel's attorney rose first, his voice smooth and rehearsed. "Your Honor, this is a case of an elderly woman who has unfortunately become unstable. She has harassed my client, her daughter-in-law, with baseless accusations, intruded on their home, and even attempted to turn the children against their own mother. For the well-being of the family, we are requesting a restraining order to protect them from this destructive influence." I felt every eye in the room shift toward me. For a moment, I let the silence hang. Then I rose slowly to my feet. "With respect, Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and steady, "what you've just heard is a story. Carefully crafted, skillfully told, but still a story. And like all stories built on lies, it cannot stand once the truth is revealed." Rachel smirked, confident. Daniel's eyes flicked to me, doubtful but searching. The judge gestured for me to continue. I reached into my bag and pulled out the small black flash drive. My fingers brushed over its surface, the way one might touch a key that opened the most important door in their life. "This," I said, holding it up, "contains the truth. Months of recordings. Words spoken in anger, in cruelty, in arrogance. Words Rachel never thought anyone would hear. Words that reveal exactly who she is and what she has done to this family." Rachel's smile faltered, just barely. Her lawyer stood quickly. "Your Honor, we object. This so-called evidence is inadmissible. It was obtained without consent." The judge held up a hand. "I'll allow it for review. Continue." I nodded and plugged the drive into the small monitor provided for evidence. My hands trembled, but not with fear, with the weight of everything this moment carried. The first recording played. Rachel's voice filled the courtroom, smooth and venomous. "Daniel doesn't need his mother hanging around anymore. She's old, she's weak. The sooner she's gone, the better." Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel's head snapped toward Rachel. She kept her face still, but a sheen of sweat glistened on her temple. I played another. Emily and Jacob don't need her. They need me. I'll make sure she's forgotten. I'll make sure she dies alone. Emily let out a small cry. Jacob clutched her hand. Daniel's face turned pale. Recording after recording, I let Rachel's own words condemn her. The arrogance, the cruelty, the betrayal. It was all there, undeniable and raw. By the time the final clip ended, the room was silent except for the sound of Rachel's uneven breathing. I turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I am not here to fight for revenge. I am here to protect my son and my grandchildren from a woman who has tried to destroy our family from the inside. I am here to show them the truth. The judge's gaze was steady, unreadable. Mrs. Henderson, she said, turning to Rachel, do you have a response? Rachel opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her perfect mask had cracked. For the first time, she looked small, cornered. Daniel rose suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. His voice shook with fury. Is it true? Rachel, is it true? She reached for his hand, desperate. Daniel, please. He pulled away. Don't touch me. His voice broke. You made me doubt my own mother. You made me treat her like she was nothing. And all this time his words trailed off, choked by grief and rage. Emily and Jacob rushed to me, their arms wrapping tight around my waist. Grandma, we're sorry, Emily whispered through tears. We didn't know. I held them close, my own tears falling freely now. The judge cleared her throat, her voice firm. This case is dismissed. The restraining order is denied. Furthermore, I am ordering an investigation into potential abuse and fraud based on the evidence presented today. Rachel's face went white. Her lawyer whispered frantically in her ear, but she looked dazed, as if the walls of her carefully built empire were crumbling around her. As the gavel struck, the room erupted. Daniel came to me, his eyes wet. He fell to his knees beside my chair. Mom, I don't know how to undo what I've done, but I swear to you, I will never doubt you again. I placed a trembling hand on his cheek. The truth has a way of shining through, Daniel. It always does. Rachel was escorted out, her protests echoing through the hall. For the first time in years, the house she had poisoned with lies felt lighter, freer. Later, as we left the courthouse together, Daniel, Emily, Jacob, and me, I paused at the steps. The sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in months, I felt at peace. I looked down at my grandchildren and smiled. Do you know what I've learned through all of this? Emily sniffled. What, Grandma? That sometimes the people who smile the brightest hide the darkest hearts. But kindness is stronger. Love is stronger. And the truth. I squeezed their hands. The truth will always win. And with that, we walked forward together, not broken, not defeated, but stronger than ever. Rachel had played her game of betrayal and cruelty, but I had played mine with patience, love, and a little revenge. And in the end, the grandmother won.